stop worrying about what other people think about you. You know, those very first steps you take as a runner, when you feel stupid and you feel you've no right to be there, you're maybe feeling you're in kind of baggy running kit and overweight and don't really know what you're doing, but you're so paranoid that people are going to see you. I know women that have gone running in the dark to start with because they didn't want anyone else to see.
Welcome to the Spartan DEKA Series on Spartan Up with Jarod, Cogswell, Director of Sport, and Yancy, Culp, Director of Programming.
This is the second episode of our 4-part series of Winning the Mind Game. And today's episode is titled, Be Bold.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Brightside. Dealing with anxiety or depression can be paralyzing, but you should know you are not broken and you're not alone. And when you want help, Brightside is there for you. Take a free mental health assessment and get up to $100 credit on your first month of treatment at brightside.com/Spartan. That's brightside.com/Spartan.
What's up, Spartans? Welcome to the DEKA Series on the Spartan Up Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jarod Cogswell, along with my brother, Yancy Culp. And today, we continue with our 4-part series called Winning the Mind Game. And we have a special guest today. But before we get there, I want to talk to Mr. Yancy Culp, he's kicking it in a really cool Camaro out there in the Hawaiian Islands, you know, just living it up just like the way Yancy does. What's up, brother?
Let me paint the scene for you here, man. It's super early in Hawaii. We're way ahead of you. So none of the family's up. I would have loved to have set the scene with the beach in the background, but no, I'm in the parking lot where I found a nice little... I found a decent connection on the phone. I'm on the hotspot in the Camaro in the parking lot. No studio for you today, brother. No death race bib in the background. You get the Johnny Camaro convertible, brother.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey, I'm excited to dig in deep with today's guest. Dr. Juliet McGrattan. She's calling in all the way from the UK today, and we don't have too many guests overseas, so this is a special one, and I think she is the perfect guest for us today. When we hear Dr. Juliet's story, it's going to be phenomenal because she is a trained doctor, spent a lot of years in the field, but made some bold moves and is now an expert running and health coach. But she's got an extensive resume, and just to share a couple of other awesome things that she's done, she's an award-winning author. It's called The Active Women's Guide to Health. She's also an international speaker, and what I'm really curious to learn more about, I did cheat a little bit and got on the website this morning, but she's the founder and director of the 261 Fearless Club over in the UK. So with that being said, we wanted to welcome you to the show, Juliet.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. We kind of wish I was in Hawaii, but England is okay.
Well, hey, listen, you obviously have had a very diverse career. And what's cool about your story, as I was learning more about you, was just you've been able to follow and chase down your passion, which obviously now is running and helping and supporting others. Tell us, if you could, just give us a little bit of background about where you were and where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. So I was a GP, which is like a family doctor here in the UK, for about 16 years. And after about 13, 14 years into that, I discovered running myself. And I really realized the incredible power that it had to improve health. It improved my health mentally and physically. And I felt like I just discovered this amazing medicine. And I started sharing it with all my patients. And then I started getting a group of women together in my village and helping them to run so they could experience it too. And I just became really, really intrigued, fascinated. I wanted to learn more and more about how running in particular was improving health, what it was doing to my body, what it was doing to my brain, so that I could then actually go and help other people to do that. And I began writing, as you say, writing books and magazine articles, etc. And everything had grown, and I had to make a decision. I couldn't do everything. Being a doctor is quite all consuming. And then trying to do all this other stuff at the same time. And I just had to, as you say, be bold and be fearless and just make a decision and decide what I was going to do. And at that point, I just decided I'm going to leave my clinical practice and I'm going to try and help people be healthy in a new way. And that's when I made that kind of full transition.
Well, and when did you make that transition?
I actually made it quite gradually. Over about 2017 to 2019 was when I actually officially left medicine. But about the 5 years prior to that, I've been doing a little bit of writing, a little bit of helping other people to run, etc. And that gradually built up. But because it was such a big decision, I didn't just wake up one day and go, that's it, I'm going. I kind of had to justify to myself and build up my plan B over about 3 or 4 years, really.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about this conversation, I'm going to let Yancy speak next because he works with a lot of runners himself. So, Yancy, go ahead.
This is such a valuable guest for me. And as a runner and a running coach, if all of us runners got around and say, if we could create the perfect person and to write the perfect book, we would say, hey, let's take somebody that practiced what you call whole health, as the whole health doctor, physical, psychological, social. Let them be in that world for a long, long time. Let them be a runner for a long, long time. Let them deal with all the niggles, all the stuff that we deal with. Write the first book that really focused on females, and then write the second book all about running for all of us. I'm like, I got chills when I was doing the research. I've been to the doctor, that's not a runner that says, well, just orthotics, ibuprofen, and get some rest. We've heard that from all of them. We've all heard that so many times. And you have the absolute perfect resume. One, I'm geeked to read the books. I'm going to be honest. I haven't read from cover to cover either one of your books. I just do the deep dive podcast research. So for every single runner out there, and 99% of people have at least dabbled with it. Some of us are knee deep in it. For every runner out there, this is one, going to be a great episode. But two, after you're done with the episode, we want you to do a deep dive into both of her books. So,
thank you.
Juliet, can you start off and share a little bit more? Obviously, you have gotten involved at a deep level within the running community that you serve. And we talk about this a lot on the fitness side of things. We talk about the not just the physical, but the mental and the emotional. What are the I guess the initiatives of 261 Fearless? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so sure. So for people that don't know what 261 Fearless is, it's a global network of women's running, which was founded by Katherine Switzer. I'm sure that's a familiar name to many people. She was the woman in the 1967 Boston Marathon who the race official tried to throw her out of the race because she was a woman, but she went on and she finished and became an amazing advocate for women in sport. And her bib number at that time was 261. And that was the number that the race official tried to sort of tear off her. And Katherine was saying that, women were writing to her to say, I write 261 on my arm before I go for a job interview because it makes me feel fearless. It makes me feel like I can be strong. And then she had people writing to her saying that they were tattooing it on themselves. So she was like, I need to do something with this number. And she created this national and international women's running network. And really, it's designed to help unite women, but to make them believe that they're stronger than they think they are. So it's particularly targeting women who maybe haven't had the opportunity to run, people in parts of the world where running is not normal, if you like, for women, or where there are many barriers to running, but also women everywhere who just don't believe and don't have the confidence. They kind of see other runners and think they like the idea of it, but they think they could never do it themselves. So we know as runners, how amazing running is and how powerful it is and how much it helps you in other areas of your life. So the network was set up to introduce women to running, help them to run, and then to see the impact of that running, of the connections they make through running, the friendships, the mental strength, the kind of self-belief, and transfer that into other areas of their lives to empower them. And that's kind of the sort of background to it.
Hey, Yancy, I definitely see some synergy here between what Juliet's talking about and what we do with DEKA, because we're the same way. I mean, we're for all levels of fitness, right? And it's so great to hear what you're saying and how you're serving that community as well. As far as the program itself, what are some of the transformational stories that you could share with us that come from that group?
Sure. So the kind of heart of the network is local clubs. So we train women to be coaches, and they go and set up a club in their local area, because those women have the best chance of connecting with other women in their community. They understand them, they know where they are, they can relate to them, they can help them. So really our biggest transformation is when we maybe, and we've seen this lots of times throughout the world, we take a woman who maybe tried a little bit of running or hasn't run before, we help them to run, and then we see them progress, and then they step up and say, I would like to be a coach. And then they're leading the group and helping other women to run as well. And it kind of comes full circle, and you see their confidence grow week by week. And all of a sudden they're teaching other people to do what they couldn't do themselves a couple of years sort of before. And that never fails to give me goosebumps. And I think that those stories are powerful anywhere. But when you see those stories perhaps in places in our clubs, say in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where running is not normal for women, where the only time that the women have run, they said, was when they were running away from war, when they were afraid. So, we associate running with having a great time, but for them, that was not the case. So to actually be able to take those women and help them to understand that running can be done for joy, and it can be done for fun, and it can unite women and help and improve the health of women in their local communities, then, that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. How did you come across, when you were talking about Katherine at the Boston Marathon, and that picture is infamous, right? And now that I know the story behind the number is even, I don't know, it just lights me up. And we've been talking a lot about this phrase of being bold, and what a bold move on her part and a bold move on your part to make a career change like you did. How did you come across Katherine?
Well, it's a funny story, really, because I hadn't heard of her. And my husband, I was training for my first marathon, and my husband bought me her book, Marathon Woman, as a Christmas present for motivation for training for my first London marathon. And I'd read it and I thought it was amazing. And I remember standing on the start line in London and thinking, I'm actually really grateful to her and all those pioneering women in the late 60s, early 70s, because without them, I wouldn't have the opportunity to stand on this start line. So I was very connected to the story and very in awe. And then I was writing at the time for women, well, I still am, for Women's Running magazine in the UK. And one of the editors there, she knew Katherine. She'd met her through some press work she'd been doing. And Katherine had contacted her and said, I want to bring 261 Fearless to the UK. Can you find me some women who love running, who want to share it, who work with other women, who are kind of experienced in this? And the next thing I knew, I got an email in my inbox from Katherine saying, could you come to London on such and such a weekend? So I just booked my train ticket. I was like, I'm there.
Oh,
wow.
Gosh.
I've got to ask you a specific question and do a little dive into your book. And this, being a doctor, you're going to help answer a question for me that, as an athlete, I've felt what we call that runner's high, or an exercise high, or a training session high. Tell us a little bit about physically what's actually going on there, because you're talking to two guys that we get a little crazy if we don't get a chance to feel that almost every day of our life. Tell us exactly what's going on there. What makes the exercise so special?
I think that's a really good question, because I think people sometimes mix up the runner's high with just the feel good that you get when you're running. Because we know that when we exercise, we get those endorphins, those natural feel-good chemicals, which our brain releases, which give us that feeling of being relaxed and calm and happy and ready to take on anything. But I don't know if you've ever had, I'm sure you have, had that elusive, that real runner's high when you actually feel like it's an out-of-body experience, when you feel euphoric, and you can almost watch yourself. You feel no pain. You're just like this amazing moving sort of machine. And I have to admit, I've only had it twice, that what I would call that true runner's high. And every run since, I'm kind of chasing that elusive kind of runner's high. Obviously, I get the positivity and the general sense of I'm amazing that you get after you've had a run. But that actual true runner's high, I don't think we really fully understand. Yes, endorphins will be linked into it. And we now know as well there are chemicals in our body which are endocannabinoids. So they're kind of cannabis-like substances, but they're natural substances in our body. And they're released too, and they also have a role in the runner's high. And they've taken blood tests from endurance runners and found high levels of endocannabinoids in their bloodstream. But the actual true, real runner's euphoric high, we don't really fully understand. But what is interesting is it doesn't happen as much in other sports. It happens much more in running. It's almost specific to running. And I do wonder, and I love this kind of train of thought really about it being an evolutionary thing. We had to run, we had to chase our prey, we had to keep going, we had to have amazing, incredible endurance. We were born to run. So I think that runner's high probably is something that protects us and helps us at those times when we really are pushing ourselves and we're really getting to the limits of what we can do. So I think it's really quite fascinating. And if people are listening haven't actually experienced that real, true, euphoric, out-of-body experience, then just keep going because you'll get there one day and it's amazing.
Oh my gosh. I was literally going to ask you, coming from a doctor, do you truly believe we were born to run? Because I sure do. And that was beautiful to hear coming out of your mouth before I even asked you I figured I knew what your answer was going to be. It's the only time I've felt what you felt it twice. This is going to sound weird. The one time I felt what you're talking about was during my only DNF in life, which was Leadville. It's the only race I it's like my big DNF, but it's still one of my favorite races because before I DNF, I felt that feeling, and it was the total out-of-body experience where I felt like I was looking down on myself, and it gives me chills just talking about it. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that.
Juliet,
I do. Sorry, go on.
What started your running journey?
Kind of stubbornness and almost accidental, real convenience, because I tried running quite a lot of times in my life and I thought it was awful. I was out of breath. I just couldn't do it for very long. But when I really needed it, it worked for me. And when I really needed it was when I'd had 3 children. They were all under 5 years old, so they were all preschoolers. And I was working as a GP and, I just needed to be on my own. I needed to be out of the house. I needed to be quiet where I couldn't be interrupted. And so I decided to start running. I live very rurally. There were no no gyms or anything sort of nearby for any other alternative. And I knew that I could just go from the front door for 20 minutes and be back. And then I could get back to mumming. So that's how it sort of started. And that it wasn't till I really needed it, I think, that I experienced the real power that it can have. And that's when it stuck. Whereas the times before, I don't think I really needed it in the same way. So I wasn't prepared to get through that really difficult couch to 5K, if you like, that really difficult early stage. I just didn't crave something enough. But when I actually really needed it, it was there for me, which was amazing.
Yeah. And since then, I understand that you've accomplished and completed quite a few marathons.
Yeah, I was just having a count up before I came in. I thought I should know, but no, I've done 10. So okay. Including a very special one, which was 2017 Boston with Katherine, because it was the 50th anniversary of the Boston Marathon that she ran in 67, and she ran it again, age 70. And that was incredible. I coincidentally ended up running the last mile and a half with her and finishing together across the line, which was a very special moment.
Oh, I bet.
That is
so
amazing.
with the legend herself.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I wanted to talk real briefly, if you could, just to give us a summary of your book, the Active Women's Guide to Health. What are some of the main lessons that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, sure. So I have two books, and the first one is Sorted, The Active Women's Guide to Health. And that was really set up to try and break down the barriers that women in particular face when they're trying to be active. So any sport. So it kind of addresses all the taboo topics that people don't want to talk about. So there's chapters on breasts and periods, and there's piles and pelvic floors and pregnancy, as well as a little bit of stuff on kind of practical time management and motivation, those kind of things. So that was really just trying to just share everything that I knew about women's health and women, and trying my very best to think of everything that could stop women being active. And then my second book, Run Well, as Yancy mentioned, was really to focus in on running, because that is what I love and that was my passion. And I really wanted to create something that was useful for men as well, because I know there's more and more women's health information out there, but I think we are lacking in men's health information, particularly when it comes to things like running. So I wanted to provide something that was really useful to men, because they go to the doctor a lot less than women. We know that. They don't access help. They put up with things. They just kind of have a bit of bravado. And so I really wanted to reach out to them and be able to speak to them sort of directly. So this second one, Run Well, Essential Health Questions and Answers for Runners, is for men and women as well. And there is a whole chapter actually on the head, and we've been talking about the brain and are we born to run and that kind of stuff. That's all in there too.
Love it.
I want to lean in on the doctor again, for all of our running friends out there and just people that love to train in general. It's widely known. Well, maybe it's not widely known. It's known in Yancy's head, because I love studying research, that as we get into the ultra distances, females have almost completely closed the gender gap. When you think about Ann Trayson and others that I've just been following for years, the famous 1994 Leadville, and as I tell my wife all the time, I know you're stronger than me mentally. On my best day, I can't match my wife mentally with mental endurance and just that sustainment. What's going on physically and mentally with our bodies, the male versus female? Why in that ultra distance that the gap is just almost erased?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And
It really is.
Isn't it crazy that they used to think women couldn't run marathons, and now the gap, as you say, is so closed? I think there's two things. Well, there's lots of things, but two in particular. One is the difference with strength. Because of the male hormone testosterone, men have a bigger muscle bulk than women. And to get speed, you need strength. So when it comes to those activities which include lots of strength, so for example, sprinting and the shorter distances, then the performance gap is really wide. But as the nature moves away from strength and more to endurance, then that's when the gap starts to close. And that could be for numbers of factors, but one of the things can be to do with the muscle makeup, the types of muscle fiber that women have versus what men have. But importantly, as you say, the psychological side of things as well. And again, might be harking back to sort of evolution, and women are designed to go through childbirth. And having done it 3 times, I can tell you that it was harder than any of my marathons. But, are we, and again, we don't fully understand this, but are we intrinsically programmed to have a lower pain threshold when the going gets really tough, to be able to dig deep in different ways, just simply because of our biological makeup? And I think it's fascinating, but it's very often older women as well who perform better in endurance events. We have quite a lot of cases of older women, say older, but women perhaps who've had children or have gone beyond sort of childbearing age, where then the gap, it gets even closer still. So I think it is fascinating, not fully understood, and I'm still learning about it myself. But as you say, it's very noticeable.
Gosh, yeah, that's great. Just for our audience here, Juliet, the great things that you're doing for the running community, and what's your advice to keeping somebody more consistent whether that be with their running program or their training in general. We don't like to use the word exercise ourselves. We always refer to it as training, but it is one of those, the biggest challenges that we have in the fitness industry is getting people to adhere to their fitness regimen. What advice could you give to keep people on course?
Yeah, consistency is key, isn't it? It's funny, I was planning to write a blog about that on Monday. So here's, I guess, a little taster of what I think I might want to say. I think, and that's where all of us fall down, isn't it? We kind of often end up, and I've heard you mention it before, being on this roller coaster of doing lots and then falling off and then doing lots and then falling off. And I think that just comes down to setting realistic targets for yourself, because we all get carried away. We all want to do more than we can. Sometimes life is busy. We've got other things demanding of our time, and trying to fit everything in sometimes can be really difficult. And I think knowing why you're doing it, and again, I heard on the last, a previous podcast when you spoke to Dr. Laura, talking about, why are you doing it? What is your purpose? And when you really understand your reasons for running in the first place, or setting a particular target, why are you actually doing it, then you have much more motivation, because we've all got a limited amount of willpower, and we need to be careful on what we use it on. But if we can actually dig deep and find out why we want to do it in the first place, but then set something that's realistic for ourselves. Maybe it's not realistic for us to run every day. Maybe the distances we've written down, we can't do alongside all the other things that we're trying to do in life as well. And we've noticed, particularly when it comes to training women, that they do an awful lot of multitasking and juggling with all the different areas in their life. And very often it's the running, which is the first thing that disappears off the to-do list. And we have to try and say to them, look, running isn't an indulgence, it's a necessity. If you can do that, then you'll be able to perform better with all those other areas of your life. So lose the guilt. Stop feeling guilty about going for a run. It's not something that you're doing purely for decadence. It's something that you need to do to keep you mentally well, physically well, to enable you to do all those other things in your life. So look at your week ahead, schedule it out, what's most important, but make sure you don't cross that run off, because if you can consistently get out there, even if it's for a short time, then that's when you're going to get the most benefits from the actual running, in terms of your training and your fitness, but also in terms of your physical and mental well-being.
I can tell you, for anybody after this going to purchase a book, what I've taught myself is you immediately to the reviews. I could have spent 3 hours reading the reviews of your 2 books. And this is one of those podcasts where if you had time, I would literally like to do a 15-minute dive into every single chapter. And I didn't know about your books, really, to being honest, before I started reading those reviews. And that's where I went first. And it was like, wow. When you read those, it's like these books are for real, and what they provide for the readers. So we always get in this spot in the podcast where we'd love to spend tons of time, and I just encourage people, as a guy that just went in and read all the reviews, you need to give these 2 books a go, because I'm darn sure going to.
Juliet, one of my final questions for you, because I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Yancy and I, we talk about, our careers, and our personal lives and the story behind it all, right? And you obviously have a story that I think is very purposeful and meaningful in how you're supporting others, and that's what drove us to the world of fitness. And obviously, you're serving your community as well. And so we talk a little bit about legacy, right? And so what would your wish be as far as your legacy is concerned? Like, what are the lessons that you could share overall, like, which is, if maybe your top 3 with our audience?
Wow. You can tell I haven't had this question prepped.
I didn't either.
I think so. What would I put on my tombstone? I think the first one would definitely be learn about yourself. That's my kind of mantra. You know, the human body doesn't come with an instruction book. You've got to write your own. You have to find out what works for you, because what works for you will be different to what works for somebody else. So we've all got our own individual instruction manuals. So read, learn, listen as much as you can, get as much knowledge as you can, find out about what's going on inside your body, because I truly believe that when you do that, then actually everything else kind of starts to make a lot more sense. But bear in mind that we're all different and that you have to adapt and do what's right for you. So that I think would be my first one. Okay. My second one would be, and this is something I've kind of learned the hard way, I guess, stop worrying about what other people think about you. You know, those very first steps you take as a runner, when you feel stupid and you feel you've no right to be there, you're maybe feeling you're in kind of baggy running kit and overweight and don't really know what you're doing, but you're so paranoid that people are going to see you. I know women that have gone running in the dark to start with because they didn't want anyone else to see. But I think if in all areas of our life, we need to just stop worrying about what other people think about us. That's nothing to do with us. That's their perception of the reality. And it's really none of our business. So I think my second point would be, yes, stop worrying about what other people think about you. Because so many times in my life, that would have stopped me doing things, or it has stopped me doing things, or it's made me not enjoy things. And it's none of our business. So that would be my second one. And my third one, I think, would be look after yourself, you know, because I think when we're training for things, we need to sometimes look at the big picture, look at what else is going on in life. Are we asking too much of ourselves? Where's our stress coming from? We can't perform in our running, in our training, if we're exhausted because of what's going on in our work life or our personal life. And it's all sometimes about getting some kind of balance. I know sometimes the balance has to tip. If you're training for an event, that the balance has got to tip towards that, and other things are going to suffer a little bit. That's kind of normal. But actually being aware of that and readdressing the balance when you can, and taking steps to eat well, to sleep as we age, to look at things that we need to do to help our bodies recover physically, mentally, and really sort of nourish ourselves in all areas of our lives to get the best out of our performance.
I love it. Well,
that's about as good as it gets when it wasn't prepared, and that was amazing. We always say we love getting these kind of answers from doctors, the pros. JC and I throw things around all the time. We're not the experts, but to hear that kind of stuff from you just really helps it settle in.
Yeah, she helps us look smarter.
Absolutely. As we always say, a lot more schooling than JC and I had. Oh man.
Well, Juliet, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm certainly inspired by your story. I love your boldness. I love what you're teaching out to the world. It's motivating, and you know, this podcast is really about a lot of different things. It's about really trying to positively impact millions of lives. Okay, not to say that we're going to have 1 million people listening to this one episode, but they should, because you are sharing your gifts and your experiences with the world in such a positive way. And like Yancy and I always talk about, we want to be surrounded by people that are lighting up the planet, and you're certainly one of those people. So thank you so much.
Oh.
I gotta share one thing. I got to share one thing real quick, and then you feel free to take the floor, my friend. This is from the equality statement from 261. I think in honor of Katherine, as well as the wonderful work that you're doing with 261. This is for the females out there. For us, to run is to be free. To run is to be fearless. 261 Fearless Inc. will continue its mission of educating and supporting all women to become more confident, to use their strong voices, and to make their own decisions as to what they want to achieve with their lives. We do not judge. We lift each other up. So I think just to honor Katherine and all the amazing work she's done, and you following her footsteps and helping lead the way along with her, it's just I got tears when I first read that this morning, and you're doing great work, my friend.
Well, thank you so much for letting me come on and talk about it and to sort of share my passions and my work. I'm really honoured, and it's been so fun chatting to you, and I hope your listeners get some value.
Yeah, and hopefully we can bring a DEKA Fit to the UK here soon.
I'll find some people for you.
Oh, we got one right here. It's you.
Sign me up.
Thank you so much, Juliet. All right, man, that was awesome, wasn't it? You know, here's what got me excited about having her on, man, because I know your running background, and you know, we haven't had somebody on the show where they're talking specific about, you know, really an individual sport. And I know how passionate you are about running amongst other things, but I know that like that's embedded inside your heart. Like, what were you thinking about talking to an expert like that?
You know, like I said in the podcast early on, it's like us runners, if we could design the perfect person to write the perfect book, it's like, okay, she did that. That person exists. Mm-hmm. And I did such a deep dive this morning for a couple hours about the book. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever been so excited to read a book, you know, preparing for a guest and now after talking to the guest. So just the amazing, everything she's provided. And I not just running, but for the fitness community as well, when you really do a deep dive into that first book that she put out.
Yeah, you know, and I loved her points at the end. You know, there's a lot of synergy between like what we're trying to do with DEKA and what she's doing with her community on the running side. But, you know, I think that the 3 points she brought up at the end, number one, learn about yourself. Okay. And she was talking about holistically, like every piece of yourself, the physical, the mental, the emotional. I think the other key one is, and this one might be my number one, is stop worrying about what other people think, you know, because I know that's always in the back of my mind, always screwing with my head, right? And this series is called Winning the Mind Game. Right. So that's a big lesson right there. And then number 3 is look after yourself, you know, and I think a lot of us are hard on ourselves. We're never doing enough. Right. And she's telling us like, hey, look at every part of your life, you know, your life as an athlete, as a parent, as a business professional. Look at all the things that you have and take care of yourself appropriately. So some great points, I think, here that fit the series that we're working on now, and yeah, overall, gosh, I want to learn more about her as well.
I'll tell you what, brother, they've got some sponsors down there in that nonprofit 261 Fearless, and I'm thinking, yo, Spartan DEKA connection there, man. We need to link up with 261. That what they're doing for the ladies who make this wonderful world of ours go round, what they're doing for the ladies is just absolutely phenomenal with the 261 group, brother.
Yeah. So please, everyone out there, just, you know, check them out, look her up. They're doing some great things over there globally. But Dr. Juliet McGrattan is definitely taking the lead over there in the UK.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Brightside. Dealing with anxiety or depression can be paralyzing, but you should know you are not broken and you're not alone. And when you want help, Brightside is there for you. Take a free mental health assessment and get up to $100 credit on your first month of treatment at brightside.com/Spartan. That's brightside.com/Spartan. Thanks for listening to this episode of the DEKA Series on Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Tuesdays, you can find Joe DeSena, founder and CEO of Spartan, interviewing biohackers, business leaders, authors, and athletes. Thursdays and Saturdays, catch episodes from our DEKA, Endurance, Trail, Combat, and La Ruta series. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time.